Welcome to Tangerini Spring Street Farm. My name is Linda Chirizio, and my husband Steve and I are the owners here at Tangerini's. I'd like to thank the Medfield Garden Club for inviting me to speak at their October meeting. We will be talking a little bit about the farm, what we do here at Tangerini's, and who we are. Tangerini's farm is a just under 70-acre farm. It is protected by an agricultural preservation restriction, which is known as an APR through the state of Massachusetts. We also have another restriction on our property put on by the trustees of reservations. Both of these restrictions help to protect the land and the buildings to keep it historical as well as keep it in agricultural production. So the land that you see all around us cannot be sold off for developments. It can never be additional houses, condos, etc. Back in the 1980s, Louis DeAngelis was farming it and using the land mostly for cows and for feed for the cows. One of our barns on site still has some of the old milking production set up for the cows. He was getting older and wanted to make sure that the property remained in agricultural production. APRs were new to the state of Massachusetts, and this property was among one of the first to actually become a preserved piece of property. In the early 1990s, the land after Louis DeAngelis passed away was put into a trust with the trustees of reservation. At that point, the trustees of reservation were looking for farmers to then take over ownership and responsibilities of the property. Charlie and Laura Tangerini put in a bid along with several other farmers that were interested. Charlie and Laura Tangerini won the bid and then became the next stewards of this piece of property. At that point, Tangerini Spring Street Farm was born. My husband Steve has been working in agriculture since he was 14. And has now been doing it for just about 23 years or so. He's worked on a variety of different farms. Starting at the age 14, he worked at Lull Farm in Hollis, New Hampshire, which is an over 200-acre farm that specializes in a lot of tree fruits as well as a variety of vegetables. And from there, he changed to manage Wardsbury Farm in 2010. And he stayed there for about 5 years. After Steve's tenure at Wardsbury Farm, we were looking for a new farm to hopefully actually start as our own. It just so happened that at that time, Charlie and Laura were also looking for 2 individuals, ideally, to come and work alongside them and ultimately take over the business. So it was quite a joining of forces where we came on board and started here in 2015. At that point, I had had several years of farming experience as well, however, not nearly as much experience as my husband. My expertise really lies in the kitchen. At the age of 15, I started working in a kitchen as my first job. I never really thought at that point that it would actually take me anywhere, let alone bring me to owning my own business at some point. I really liked working in the kitchen, but I always thought that I would end up as a school psychiatrist or a guidance counselor myself. In college, I majored in psychology, and then afterwards, having cooked for a lot of my friends throughout college, I decided that going to culinary school sounded like a lot more fun than grad school. Lo and behold, culinary school ended up being a pretty good decision for me. After culinary school, I ended up working for the Boston Red Sox. I was the chef for the owners of the Red Sox and worked at Fenway Park. We got a lot of our produce from none other than Wardsbury Farm in Sharon. At the time, it was very in the beginning stages of the local food movement, and we took a tour of Wardsbury Farm to see exactly where our produce was coming from. My now husband, Steve, was the one who drove the tractor for our tour around Wardsbury Farm. After that meeting, I started to come to Wardsbury Farm and pick his brain a lot about agriculture and how things end up from seed to the kitchen to the plate. It became a really huge interest of mine in learning all aspects and facets of agriculture into production. After working with the Red Sox for a summer, I actually ended up starting to work at Wardsbury Farm as well. I would end up working at Wardsbury Farm in the morning, where I would be picking the produce and harvesting with the crew. I would then pack it out and deliver to area restaurants in Boston, and ending at Fenway Park, where I would offload the produce, then head to the kitchen, cook it, prepare it, and serve it to the owners of the Red Sox at Fenway. It was a really awesome experience, and it taught me a lot and gave me a big head start into where we are today. Not to mention also meeting Steve, who 10 years later we're married and own a farm. From there, I ended up actually working for Langwater Farm in Easton, Massachusetts. A friend of ours owned the farm, and he was just starting out in need of some help on the farm. I learned most of what I now know today from working there and spending a lot of time with Steve and at Wardsbury Farm. About 7 years ago, Steve and I started our trek on trying to find the right spot for us for the long haul. We thought that we really wanted to start our own farm, and we were envisioning trying to find a piece of property that was a clean slate and a non-existent working farm. Funny thing is, that's really hard to do in Massachusetts. There's not that much open space, especially with a good retail community around it. So back in 2015, my husband Steve and I started here at Tangerini Spring Street Farm. At that point, there was a very minimal kitchen, and Laura was running the fields and managing all of the field operations. At that time, my husband took over the field operations with the planting, the seeding, harvesting, and managing the field crew. And I started a kitchen. I started establishing recipes and menus based on the seasons, which quickly outlived our very small makeshift kitchen in the ice cream shop. A few years ago, we built the new farm stand that we have today, as well as the brand new commercial kitchen. The commercial kitchen has allowed us to now seat up to 80 people for breakfast and lunch, as well as our various farm dinners and other events and catering options here at the farm. Back in 2019, Steve and I had the opportunity to purchase Tangerini's farm. We worked for several years with Charlie and Laura Tangerini to figure out exactly how that transition would take place and what that purchase would look like. In 2019, in April, we finally closed on the farm and became the new stewards and owners of this beautiful piece of property. Through that time, we have had a really great experience changing little pieces and facets of the business to suit our vision, as well as ultimately changing a lot due to the ongoing pandemic this year. We've made several changes that ultimately will probably end up changing a little bit of our business model in general, and several other things that we cannot wait to get back to normal. Here at the farm in the fall, we do like to indulge ourselves in a variety of different fall decorations. We get corn stalks from a local farm, as well as a variety of different pumpkins, gourds, and decorative winter squash. A lot of those pumpkins and gourds and winter squash come from Wardsbury Farm in Sharon. We also carry a number of different sizes of mums as well. Those we usually get from 2 different local farms here in Massachusetts. Oftentimes throughout the fall, we usually do hay rides and a variety of different fall activities, including our haunted hayride that is typically towards the end of October. This year, due to the ongoing pandemic, we will be keeping hay rides to a minimum. We're currently working on figuring out a way to include some socially distant hay rides. However, our haunted hayride will not be running. This year, we've made several different changes here at the farm. Our farm stand is open just as normal. We are open 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., and will remain open straight through Thanksgiving. We also offer curbside pickup and home delivery now. Our curbside pickup is 7 days a week, and our home delivery is 2 days a week. We will be progressing and continuing with home delivery and curbside pickup straight through the winter months, which is something that we've never done before. We're excited to be able to offer this and look forward to being able to serve and reach our customers throughout the winter without having our farm stand open in its full capacity. We also feel like it is really important for us to help reach our local communities with customers that have a difficult time getting access to local fresh produce and are dealing with food insecurities. Through that, we work with SNAP and HIP, which is similar to food stamps. HIP is a program run through Massachusetts that helps to get fresh local produce specifically to people who have a difficult time having access to it. We also work with several different local food banks as well as different companies that help to distribute produce to different communities in need as well. Some of these food banks pick up as frequently as weekly, and other times they'll pick up just several times throughout the season, especially when we have bulk quantities of product that we can donate to these different corporations. Here at Tangerini's, we grow about 75 different varieties of fruits and vegetables. About 90 to 95% of those we do grow following organic practices. However, we are not certified organic and have not gone through the process to get certified through the FDA. The crops that we do not grow following organic practices are our corn, our apples, our blueberries, and our peaches. There's a variety of different reasons as to why we do that. The biggest reason is because apples, corn, peaches, and blueberries can be extremely challenging to grow organically, especially in New England, given the climate and how prolific some of these crops are. The diseases that affect them and the pests that affect them can be really detrimental to the health of the trees and of the crops. This year in particular, we've had a really big problem with the sweet corn in general. This has nothing to do with whether or not we grow it conventionally or organically, but this year we have lost about 75% of our corn harvest to birds. Pests here at the farm come in all shapes and sizes. We can be talking about something as small as aphids that are wreaking havoc on our Brussel sprouts or other greens, or we can be talking about the corn earworm that are munching at the tops of all of our corn. And then we can get up to something as large as the deer that are coming in from the woods. And this year they were eating, oddly enough, the silk off of the corn and the tops off of carrots, munching on lettuce, which is very common for them. But the corn was definitely a new one this year. We're oftentimes met with woodchucks, rabbits, and a whole slew of other animals. One thing this year that really was devastating for us, as I had mentioned before, was the birds in the corn. We have a number of different tactics for dealing with the birds. Most common that we use are like blow-up dolls that you would see waving in the wind, and they'll be in the corn. They're supposed to be a distraction for the birds, and the birds end up getting used to them and they don't care. We also have noisemakers that will send off different noises that are supposed to scare the birds away. They get used to them and they don't care. We do have a couple of red-winged hawks and one falcon that also nest at the farm as well. And they are great predatorial birds, but they cannot keep up with the hundreds upon hundreds of red-winged blackbirds that also call the farm their home. Oftentimes you'll also see different white fencing around our property. That's movable deer fencing. It is an electric fence, so definitely don't touch it, but it helps to keep the deer out. We also use row covers. They're basically like a giant white sheet that we put over top of our vegetables. This we can use for a number of different reasons. Oftentimes we're trying to keep the crops warm at certain times of the year, whether it be in the spring or in the fall, but it also helps to keep out certain pests as well. Some seasons really come with some challenges. During the winter months, we're oftentimes worried about how warm it gets and how cold it gets and how quickly. Oftentimes, if we have too many days that are above a certain temperature, some of the trees come out of dormancy. And if it gets too cold too quickly, we can damage the fruit buds and the fruit set for the following year. As we get into the summer months, we're oftentimes worried about the strawberries and different crops that we put in the ground earlier. And if we're going to have a late frost, how cold will it be and how much that frost can actually damage our crops? During the summer months, we're met with a slew of other challenges. Sometimes it's water related. There's either too much, there's not enough, and in the very rare chance, there's just right. So this year we've been met with some really fabulously beautiful days, but a very little amount of water. We do have an irrigation pond on site that was dug about 4 years ago. This year was the lowest point that we've ever seen our pond. Our pond at its lowest point this year was about 8 feet down from where it usually is. That's a lot. And it really made a big difference on choosing what crops get irrigated, when we irrigate them, and for how long. And we have a series of hydrant stations throughout the whole farm that allow us to adequately water all of our crops. During the night, we're pulling out our water guns, which are basically like giant sprinklers, and watering most of our crops and running water through the night. The reason we do this is because if we're to do it in the beginning and heat of the day, most of that water is going to evaporate just as soon as it hits the ground. So at night, when it's cooler, when the sun's not out, that's when we can ensure most of the water is actually going to get into the roots and to the crop where we need it to be. So in the field directly behind me at the moment, this was our first tomato planting, as well as our last cucumber and summer squash zucchini planting. Typically, when we're done with a planting, we like to get the planting into the field as quickly as possible. We do tend to come out and we'll either mow the planting down or we will use our disc harrow and harrow it into the field. This helps to keep the fields looking nice and clean, allowing us to get them planted with cover crops quicker, which allows the cover crops to grow and be in a better position as we go into the winter. It also allows us to prevent disease pressure from spreading to other crops throughout the field. So cover crops here at the farm are plantings that are going to help put some nutrients and nitrogen back into the soil and get them ready and healthy for the next year. As some of you might know, here at Tangerini's, we offer a variety of CSA memberships. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. These programs are vital to the health and well-being of our farm business. Through the CSA shares that are purchased in the wintertime, this allows us to have a financial backing through the times of the year that are usually the barest and the most slim for us as farmers. When somebody purchases a CSA share, it ensures that you will have a variety of produce that is available during a certain time of the year. We have several different CSA options. For the spring CSA, it's very different than any of our other options. The spring CSA is strictly a pick your own option. So the spring CSA is mostly greens, occasionally radishes, Hakurei turnips, bok choy, that kind of thing. You can come as frequently as you like throughout the week and pick from our greenhouses in April and May. And starting in June, we offer some field options as well to pick from. For the spring CSA, we encourage people to pick what they're going to use at that moment and then come back and harvest more later on in the week. This allows you to use what you have at its peak freshness and then not waste any either by overpicking and not being able to use all of it. The summer CSA, which we oftentimes refer to as our main CSA, this one starts in the middle of June and will run until the end of October. This is our most popular CSA option, as most people think of this as the peak of produce in the New England area. There's two different options for this CSA. We have an every week and an every other week. The size share is the same for both of them. However, those who are in smaller families or don't eat as many vegetables, we oftentimes suggest that you purchase the every other week share. During this, you will get a variety of greens and spring vegetables, scallions and spring garlic, kale, head lettuce, Swiss chard, and a whole number of different things in the spring, in June. And then it will quickly build up into some more of your summer vegetables, with tomatoes coming in July, corn usually towards the end of July and into August, peppers, eggplant, cucumbers, summer squash, zucchini. It rounds out the season in September and October as we welcome in the storage crops and the winter varieties of your vegetables. During the summer months, you'll also see cherry tomatoes, plum tomatoes, as well as cantaloupe, honeydew melon, and watermelon. The watermelon that we grow is a yellow watermelon, which is a seedless, red seedless, and a red seeded. During the main season CSA, we also do tend to have a couple different options for U-pick as well. Most frequently, our U-pick option is for herbs. We grow a number of different fresh herbs throughout the summer and into the fall months. Those are available for our main season CSA customers to go and pick at their leisure. We grow basil, cilantro, dill, thyme, sage, and parsley. A different part of our U-pick for our CSA typically involves our cherry tomatoes and sometimes green beans, a couple different crops that can be a little bit labor intensive for our staff to pick and can be a fun experience for our CSA members. Our winter CSA then picks up in November. The winter CSA is every other week for everybody. There's no option to pick up as an every week share. It's strictly every other week. So for this one, you get a lot of storage vegetables. And by storage vegetables, I mean vegetables that are going to actually last you a substantial amount of time if you leave them in your refrigerator or a root cellar. We're talking about carrots, beets, parsnips, rutabaga, daikon radishes, cabbage, and then we get into some of the slightly more delicate vegetables of bok choy, kale, Napa cabbage, Brussel sprouts, as well as still potatoes, onions, shallots, garlic, and your winter squash. Usually we harvest our sweet potatoes at the very end of September or early October, but oftentimes they make a very brief occurrence in our main CSA before really getting into the winter CSA because they do take several weeks to cure. There's usually weather dependent a U-pick option to the share as well. Some years we get a really early deep freeze and those vegetables are absolutely done. And other times we're able to pick out of the fields for these winter hardy greens into the end of December. Those greens usually include arugula, bok choys, tatsoi, spinach, kohlrabi, and then we also get into radishes, Hakurei turnips, broccoli rabe, to name a few. Our deep winter share is structured a little bit differently. This one, we have all of our storage crops. It includes 20 to 25 pounds of produce every other week. It runs for 10 weeks, so you pick up 5 times, and you can pick up a variety of these products in any number of quantities that you wish. If you are particularly excited about sweet potatoes and carrots, then you can take just sweet potatoes and carrots. The variety of produce that you can expect in the deep winter CSA ranges from carrots, beets, rutabaga, parsnips, turnips, cabbage, butternut squash, sweet potatoes, potatoes, onions, shallots. You get the point. All the storage vegetables for sure. During the deep winter CSA, we have usually 3 greenhouses in production for greens. At that time, you're also allowed to go into the greenhouses and pick salad mix, spinach, arugula, kale, and tatsoi typically in the greenhouses. This becomes people's favorite part of the winter CSA because when it's snowing out, you get to go into the warmth of a greenhouse and pick some really tasty treats. So now that we've touched upon a lot of different vegetables that we grow here in the farm, we also do a number of different fruits. We start off the year in late May and early June with our strawberries. Our strawberries are strictly a U-pick crop for us, which means that we do not harvest these for our retail store. We only use this field to allow customers to go out and pick your own. After the strawberries, we move into Juneberries. Juneberries are a much lesser known berry here in New England. They're oftentimes also called Saskatoons or service berries. They're kind of like a blueberry, but they have a slight tinge that tastes almost like a cross between a blueberry and a grape. So these are also a U-pick crop for us, and they last that sweet spot right in between strawberry and blueberry season. Blueberries run typically from early July, generally speaking right around the 4th of July, until the middle of August. These are also a U-pick item for us, as we do not typically harvest these for our farm stand. After that, we get into the cantaloupe, honeydew, and watermelon. This fruit is the only annual fruit that we do grow here at the farm. We move into the fall with the apples. We have a 2-acre dwarf apple orchard. At the time when it was planted, seemed like a pretty good size for our farm. At this point, we are definitely rethinking that. It gets picked out pretty quickly, and we tend to only have it open for 3 weeks to a month, which is a really short amount of time. And we're hoping at some point to be able to expand on our apple orchard so that we're able to provide our customers with a bigger and better picking experience. These apples usually start to be ripe right around the end of August, and based just on the customer base that we have here at the farm and the size of our orchard, we're usually done harvesting them by the 3rd week in September. This is also strictly a U-pick section of our farm. We do not, especially given the size of the orchard, we do not harvest these for our retail store. The fruits that we do sell in our retail store, we get from local farms. And we definitely keep as local as possible, as well as being conscious about how these products are being grown. This is really important to us, that the stuff that we don't produce, that we bring into our farm stand, that we can stand behind fully and understand the practices that the other farms are using. A lot of our berries that we sell in our store are purchased through Norse Farm out in Whately, Mass. The apples oftentimes are coming from Sunnycrest Orchards or Brookdale Fruit Farm. Other fruit that we're growing here on the farm that is the only non-U-pick fruit that we grow as a perennial are our peaches. Our peach trees are producing typically from the middle of July until late August and occasionally early into September. We do not allow U-pick just because the orchard is not that large and because the fruit tends to be a lot more delicate than apples. So it's a lot easier to drop the fruit off the tree, and then it's really not a viable product at that point. So now that we've crossed through all of our fruits and vegetables, these are things that we're using for our CSA, as well as selling in our farm stand. We have a very small wholesale operation as well. Our wholesale operation is a very, very tiny part of our business, and it just reaches out to several different small restaurants in the area. A larger part of where our produce goes is into our farm kitchen. So we use all of our farm produce, fruits and vegetables, to create different meals here at the farm. We use 5 different menus as well as a variety of different specials throughout the seasons. Our kitchen is open from May 1st through November, and allowing for a variety of different lunch and breakfast options based strictly on seasonal produce availability. Our farm kitchen also uses all of this produce to offer a variety of different baked goods and prepared products that can be purchased in the store as well. The ice cream shop serves local ice cream made from Bliss Dairy in Attleboro, Massachusetts, and we also are able to do different smoothies, seasonal slushies, and a variety of different products through the ice cream store as well. You can see a lot of different employees bustling about every day. Here at the farm, in the peak of our season, we employ between 60 and 70 employees. We have about 10 to 15 employees that work primarily in the fields. They range in age from local high school kids to some that are out of college and call this their full-time job. In the farm stand and the ice cream shop, we are working primarily with high school students and local college kids. We love that we can employ so many young people, and they are an absolute joy to work with. Our kitchen is a smattering of everything. We have a number of different high school and college students that work with us seasonally, as well as a couple of people who work with us on a full-time basis. It really rounds out everything with bringing a really wonderful wide range of experiences and abilities to the farm. Over in our flower fields, we offer a variety of different options for flower picking here at the farm as well. We have several different successions of flowers that are planted so that there's one planting followed by a second, followed by another. We offer pick your own flowers that people can come and purchase a mason jar to go and pick. We also offer a flower CSA. The CSA picks 20 stems of flowers, usually from the end of June to the middle to end of September. The flowers that we grow change year by year, but we typically have a general variety of some Rudbeckia, Cosmos, Dianthus, Digitalis, Foxglove, sunflowers, lots of different varieties of sunflowers, zinnias. This year we also put in some dahlias, as well as a number of different things that we end up popping in for different varieties. The flower field does change location every year. However, it typically has a general proximity to the farm stand itself. We do rotate all of our crops every year to help with disease and pest control. Our sunflowers, however, the larger fields of sunflowers that we do grow, we grow 3 different successions of sunflowers every year, and each planting ranges between about a ½ acre to an acre of sunflowers at a time. Those are typically in the same location every year. Those are available for our CSA members to pick as part of their CSA share for the flower CSA, but they're also available for the public to go out and pick as well. We also have several different rows of hydrangeas. There's 2 different varieties of hydrangeas out there. Those usually start to bloom in mid to late August, and they'll continue to be in bloom through the majority of the fall. Those are typically available for our flower share members as well as the general public to go and harvest and pick too. I'd like to thank you all for joining me and allowing me to give a presentation here about our farm and let you in on a little bit about what we do and the things that go on here on a daily basis as well as through the seasons. If you'd like any more information, please feel free to reach out to myself or Steve or any of our staff by stopping by the farm yourself, reaching out to us on email, or visiting our website, www.tangerinesfarm.com. Thank you so much to the Medfield Garden Club for inviting me to share what we love to do and give you a little glimpse inside our daily lives here at the farm.